So this is a continuation of the rebuild of an NSR 250, and I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the barrels and what I do with the barrels. So this one, there was a sign of blow, the ring gap blow past. Other than that, there's no score marks, obvious score marks. So it's in really good condition, that appears to be. So the first thing I did is measure it. To make sure that there's no excessive wear, to see what pistons or piston rings are needed, and to do that I use these things. So these things are called bore gauges. So you select the right one, which unfortunately this one's 54mm, so it's a halfway house, and all you do is you just stick it in the bore, release it, find out when you want to be horizontal, tighten it to fix it, and then you just move it up and down to make sure you are actually on the correct diameter. You can do this by feel, you know what it is, and you got to remember that you do it in both axes, because the greater wear is typically in with the rotation of the crank, because it's forcing the piston into the line of walls, so you'll get more. You'd also do top and bottom, check the bottom. The greatest wear can be either at the top or it can be around the ports, and the reason why it's around the ports is because the airflow, especially if you've got entrained water, scrubs the oil from the bores, and that's why you get excessive wear there. So I have measured this. It came in very close to 54. I mean extremely close. So there's no need for an oversized. These are chromed, so these are coated. You can't really rebore these. You need to recoat them. My other bikes, let's say the RD350LC, that's the one that's been bored the most. I do have a spare set for that. That is cast iron, so they get rebored. You rebore typically based on how much wear there is, but the rebore oversizes are either 0.25 or 0.5. I think it's 0.25 for the RD350LC. Now I don't do the rebore. I don't have any machinery to do that. I always get it, take it to the guy that does the work for me. I do measurements just to make sure that the barrel's not completely knackered before I take it to him. For this one I can measure it because I know that I can't rebore, so it's either knackered or it's okay. The 350LC, that goes to him. He'll do the proper measurements, and he tells me what oversized pistons I need. He then waits for me to get those pistons and deliver it to him, because what he then does is he rebores based on the piston and piston ring. So each barrel is matched to the piston that fits it, because that way you get better control of tolerances. So obviously I'm not doing that. I have done. So this is a standard piston size. You can see that there's standard 54. As I say, I don't know whether you could go oversized on these. I don't know how much chrome in there is. I'd imagine it's very little you can do. And then, oops, just do that one again. So this is a standard bore, 54mm. As I say, I think you're limited to what you can overbore because it is chromed. So this is what you get in the kit. You get your piston rings. I have opened this. This is why it's like this. You'll get your circlips, your piston pins. The circlips have had taken two engines apart where one of the circlips was missing, right? And what happens then is the piston pin comes out and it machines the bore, and that's happened to me twice now. One on a Honda CB404 and one on an RD350LC. I still have the barrel for that, because I was hoping, because you can. On the cast iron ones, you can bore them out and then fit a sleeve. It's not great, but you can do that, and I was going to do it with that, but to be honest, I just can't be bothered. And this is a piston. So, do you need to change the piston every time you change the piston rings? No, definitely not. However, it is really important that you measure the piston ring gap. Let me get this out. And what I mean by that is the clearance that the ring has. It's really important, and clearly in this case, that you check your ring groove gap, because if the piston's worn and the ring groove gap is too big, it does two things. One is that there's a springiness in the ring, and you can see that when you push it in, it's springy. That springiness does not form the seal. Okay. What forms the seal is gas pressure. So you've got your ring and your groove. What happens is, as pressure builds, that springiness causes a seal. The pressure comes and it goes on top and behind the piston ring, and it forces the ring into the liner wall, and that's where the seal comes from. If there's wear on the ring groove, then that gas pressure may not build up, so you may not get a gas seal, right? And because of that, then you'll get blow past. The other reason why it's important is because if you have too big a gap, right, the ring will actually it'll split, yeah, what word would you call that? Yeah, if you don't, yeah, the other reason is that if you've got too big a gap, the ring will cant over, okay, and that will lead to either ring breakage or excessive ring wear, or even damage to your liner, which is quite likely, especially at the tips. These things are very small tips, which the reason for that is because that there fits into a little pin here, right? And the purpose of that is obviously to stop the ring from moving round. But what that will do is it'll stop the ring gaps from lining up, right? But however, I mean, this is small bike stuff. On bigger engines, you actually want the rings to rotate, because then that evens wear out on the ring. You even have designs which force the rings to rotate, and on very large engines you have systems which look at the ring as the piston passes and make sure that the ring is rotating, and if it's not rotating, you actually have to pull the piston, clean the ring up to get it moving again and get it back in again. So yeah, so do you do you have to change the piston every time? No, you don't. You can't just change the rings. I have bought pistons in this case because there was a little bit of ring groove wear. Not a lot, but there was, and if I put new pistons in, hopefully it's the case here because these are supposed to be pucker pistons, then you're in a known condition. So when I come to do this engine again, and these rings are so thin, you can see that that wear on these is going to be quite high. They are actually coated. I don't know what they're coated with. So there will be a top and bottom ring. They should, on some designs as well, you actually have a packer that goes behind the second ring, right? It's a spring that pushes it out. You sometimes see people saying, oh yeah, you don't really need that. Absolutely you need that. Make sure you put it on. Same thing about oil control rings on older engines, less performance engines as well. Always make sure you put the spring in, because that is formed, as I say, assists with forming the seal. Yeah, so that's interesting. You live and learn. So the ring groove is tapered. That's a ring in successfully. That's a top ring, obviously. You could ask the question about how do you get the rings on. Well, I normally have a piece of shin brass. I don't know where it is. So I just as a stopgap, I use the feeler gauge. As long as you don't go stupid and grab the ends of the ring and pull it out, they are pretty robust, especially good quality ones. If you get cheap ones, then if you grab it or if you get it and push it on, and then the thing is obviously distorted, don't use that ring. Okay, throw the ring away because it hasn't been properly tempered. You're going to do a lot of harm to your engine if you fit those. Or you obviously come up from that way, and there is a taper, a lead-in. See there? Right, you just got to be extremely careful. I mean, sometimes you get them and they just go straight on. Loads of oil as well when you do this. Loads and loads of oil. Stupid amounts of oil. Right, and sometimes you just slip on, but other times I have fought. Right, and by fought I mean just have to keep doing it and doing it and doing it until it actually goes on. Whatever you do, don't lose your rag and give it a good push, because you'll just break the ring. Right, it will go on. Whatever you think, it will go on. There are weight. I've even got one. There are ring compressors which you put them on, you kind of tighten them and they squash it all in, right? That's great for going from the top. Not so good obviously for coming from the bottom, although you can obviously fit them on the bottom and push them in. I don't use them. I use them for car engines. As I say, I've got one there. Don't use it for bike engines. Just be really careful when you do it. And this engine's got a really nice lead in there, so there shouldn't be any problems, because once it's gone onto this part of the bore, the ring's compressed, so it doesn't matter about these, but there's no lead on this. So that's it. No, it wasn't it. I'm getting old, so I forget stuff, so you'll have to excuse me. So you can see that I've already measured these for the bores. Okay, so and what that measurement is the ring gap. So what I do is you place the ring into the bore. As I say, you should do this top and bottom, but if I've measured the bore, so I don't need to do this. What I'm checking now is the ring itself, not the bore. Just make sure it's all even, so it's nice and square. And then what you do is you get your feeler gauges and you measure the ring gap. Now you need to have a ring gap because the ring's going to heat up and it's going to close down. So if you don't have a sufficient ring gap, right, it's going to seize the engine. Yeah, that's what it's going to do. You know, especially if you can get a cold seizure if you try and rev the bike too quickly when it's not properly warmed up. So there's a minimum, obviously there's a maximum as well. The maximum would be quoted in the book, the handbook, and that's obviously telling you that the ring's worn. So you want a ring gap. This one it's measuring around about just under 0.1, which seems to be quite small to me, but the maximum is something like 0.8 or something. So, and I think it was the rings I took off were up at that level. They were right on the border of maximum allowable. So that was the reason why I've changed the rings. The other thing I forgot to mention is that obviously I always leave this on and the battery runs out. The other thing I forgot to mention is, of course, once you've taken your bore measurements, you know, what are you going to do with that? So of course you need the other bit, which is this thing. These are my micrometers. This is the one that always gets used. So this is a 50 to 75. Just make sure the face is okay. This is your standard gauge. So this is exactly 50 millimeters. That whatever there is a temperature that it goes at, but as everything's the same temperature, we're okay to measure that. So the first thing you do is make sure there's no wear on the gauge. A bit of messing about. So we're pretty good. It's coming out there. You also get to feel that the important thing, because you can, if you grab this and give it a good turn, you'll get it below the figure. So that's why this thing at the end, the idea of this is that you get it to where it is and you just turn this a few times, and that just puts a little bit of extra torque on it. Sufficient, and you get a reading, and now we're pretty close to 50 mil. And now, because we know that this is reading accurately, we can actually take the measure that we took from the bore. So if we take that, and then we just measure this. So the machinist out there will be shouting, "Oh no, you don't do that. You just need to have an internal mic." An internal mic basically looks a bit like that. Just if you imagine this section here, right? That's what an internal mic looks like. So you can get quite small ones. The problem comes when you're dealing with 50cc bikes or bores which are 50cc, so they're really quite small diameter. You know, you're not going to get a bore gauge. You're not going to get a bore micrometer in there. They just physically can't get them that small. and that's where these things come into play. Sorry, these things come into play, and you know, even the guy who does my my barrels, he actually pinched my set because he did a I think it was a Honda PC50. He did the rebore for that for me. Now that's it.